Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Review Board. I'm Councillor Danielle Lind. If we could, is there any apologies?
No apologies.
No apologies, okay, thank you. If we can just go through the room and just introduce ourselves from the back to the front on each row, that would be fantastic, thank you.
Hello, Tracy Churchill from St Joseph's in Derby.
Councillor Tracy Peard from the Derwent ward.
Councillor Gaurav Pandey, Mackworth ward. Thank you.
Councillor Matthew Eyre, Oakwood ward.
Chris Hulse, Parent Governor Representative.
Steve Grundy, Parent Governor.
Sue Bonser, Councillor for Abbey ward.
Councillor Paul Hasgrave for Abbey ward also.
Andy Smith, Strategic Director for People Services.
Good evening everyone, I'm Councillor Yvonne Williams, Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Skills.
Hi everyone, I'm Connie Spencer and I'm the Youth Mayor.
I'm Priya Gillen. Did you catch that? Deputy Youth Mayor.
Mick Burrows, I'm Director of Commissioning for Derbyshire CCG for Children, Young People, Learning Disabilities and LD and Autism. Shut up.
Oh, is that why? Hello, Helen O'Higgins, Head of Children and Young People Mental Health Commissioning at Derby and Derbyshire CCG.
Hello everyone, Councillor Course, I'm the Councillor for Alveston ward and I'm also the Vice Chair of this board.
Thank you everybody. Item 2, no late items to be introduced by me today. Declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. So item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of June. Can we all agree they're a true and accurate record of the meeting? Yes? Take silence as agreement. Okay, thank you. So moving on to item 5 now, it's an update report on CAMS and mental health of young people, demand and response draft plan. So I'm going to pass you over now to Helen Higgins and colleagues. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just have a quick scene set, if that's okay, and hand it over to Helen. So I've had children in my portfolio for some years now, and normally you get Dave Gardner and Helen. So I'm grateful to be allowed to come along tonight. So the Future in Mind plan, which started out in 2015, every year has to have a refresh, and this is the time to publish the refresh for 2021. We've done an awful lot of work during COVID and had to adapt services significantly right throughout COVID so that we were facing services towards the family and facing a lot of challenges with children and young people who were had more familial disharmony than normal. We've come through that. We've been successful in maintaining a digital offer for children and young people and expanding our services on a graduated offer. And Helen will tell you shortly how we're doing in terms of performance on all those things. Just to point out that we need to publish our plan by the end of September, and it's now been through boards in the city and the county. So we'd really welcome any additional comments you want to make before the final plan is published. I think it's very opportune. The plan's very complicated, 89 lines of inquiry. Goodness knows how many boards we've seen to get opinion from and to build on those 89 lines of inquiry. And you'll see from our plan how we've also involved citizens and young people and MH2K in the design and delivery of that plan. And I'm pleased to say we've also managed to maintain good levels of service into youth justice as well, which I know is a top priority for quite a lot of people. And we've had particular focus on LD and autism and complex behaviours, and not evident in the plan, but we've also been strengthening our complex behaviour team in UHDB. But essentially this plan you'll see today focuses on 2021. So we're happy to update where we're at into early 21-22.
Okay, thank you, Mick.
Yes, Councillor Hezza-Grave.
This is a very thorough and lengthy report, and I hope it wouldn't
Councillor Hezza-Grave, can we let them finish their
No, I haven't. I just want to make some remarks about how we conduct this. I was going to suggest that we could ask questions during the presentation rather than waiting for questions at the end, because it'll break the flow up a lot.
Would you be happy with that, or would you rather complete your presentation? I'm quite happy for you to take.
Yep, I'm happy to take questions as we go.
If Alpha happy with that, then yes. Thank you, Councillor Hezza-Grave.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, as Councillor's just mentioned, it is a very large plan that has been circulated, and also the plan that the committee has seen was one of the earlier drafts. We do have a more final draft that is ready for publication, which is sort of a lot neater, and it has had a lot of feedback. So I know that you have seen an early draft to start with, but it does remain a weighty plan. So what I shall do, if Lindsay, if you'd like to next slide, please. Very quickly go through some of the successes and the progress that we have made under Futures in Mind, then outline some of the key changes that we have for moving forward in the next 12 months, outline some of the finance and investments, and quickly kind of go through some of the demand that I know you're often keen to look at. So, Futures in Mind, as we've reported previously to the committee, we've had a investment over the last 5 years where we have been able to increase significantly the proportion of children with a mental health problem who have access to NHS services. So we were really pleased that by the end of 2021, the reporting period for the plan, we'd achieved 38.1% of our children and young people accessing services, which is in excess of the 35% national target. So we're very pleased about that. And we have seen, even in the last quarter, we have actually risen now to 49% by the end of June. So we're really pleased to see that we are managing to access a large proportion of the children who need our services. As Mick has mentioned, one of the successes of Futures in Mind has been the digital offer and COOS, which is universally accessible to all our children and young people. And there's a lot of work that's been done through schools to ensure that children are aware of that support. We've also, another key success has been the website, the Emotional Health and Wellbeing website, which is a resource for professionals, for teachers, for parents, carers, as well as for children. Another key area of success has been the specialist community advisors from CAMS who have been who work in each of the localities and have a really good understanding of the services local in the community where they are based, and we've had some really good feedback around their role in connecting children to the right support. Our targeted early intervention offer is what's been new during Futures in Mind, and that has been a success as well. We've also been fortunate to be able to bid for and to be awarded 6 school networks across Derby and Derbyshire, 2 of which are in the city for the mental health support teams in schools. And we've also expanded our CAMS services, particularly eating disorder services, as well as our core CAMS offer. So we have seen significant investment over those 5 years of Future in Mind, and the plan outlines a lot more of the detail around those successes. If Lindsay can move on, please. Thank you. So So the key change that we see after the end of Futures in Mind is we're working now into the NHS long-term plan and the ambitions that have been set for us within that. And so our next step takes us to 2024, and we've had a new raft of investment to support this. One of the key areas that we are now looking at is the urgent care at the more acute end of the pathway. So that's a significant change that you will see in the plan, that we are now we now have a requirement to have a 24/7 response to all children and young people in crisis by 2024, and we are working very hard to be able to achieve that. We have a plan where we will be expanding our crisis liaison and intensive home treatment service for all our children. It won't be siloed to particular diagnoses. We will be looking at the child. So if they have a mental health, learning disability, autism, eating disorder, complex behaviour, however they present in crisis, we're looking to make sure the team is able to support them, which I felt is crucial. Another key area that's threaded through the plan is around communication and navigation, and obviously linking again with the SCARS and the website, but also really working with MH2K and doing some really good co-production to ensure that our children know how to access the right support at the right time. And then the other key area that we're all developing is the graduation of the response. So we have, as I say, we've got the universal offer and the targeted early interventions, core CAMS and an urgent care response. But we know that children don't fit into nice, neat boxes of pathways. So we're really looking to make sure that we have layers of support and that we're able to wrap around the support to the child in a way that is meaningful to them. And another key focus going forward is, as I've already mentioned, is that inclusivity, making sure that all children, however they see their needs, however they want to fit in with services or offers, that they feel accepted and they feel that the offer is communicated well to them. And then one of the key underlying foundations for all of the plan is obviously our workforce. Now, we're very aware that our workforce in health and social care has had a rough ride over the last 18 months, and it has been tough. We know we have quite an exhausted workforce, and they have worked extremely hard and continue to do so. And so we're doing what we can to ensure that we support and train our work staff and really value what they do, as well as the investment that we do have. We know we need to expand our services, but we don't have sufficient numbers of already qualified consultants and specialist nurses available, particularly who have specialism in children's in mental health. So we're looking to be a lot more creative about kind of growing our own staff, looking at recruit to train opportunities, and also looking at more peer mentorship, more youth worker schemes, and looking at how we can work within the community with those people who understand our children and young people best, and how we can recruit them and engage them in the workforce going forward. To move on, please. Thank you. So just to give you a rough kind of outline of some of the schemes that we have coming online over the next 3 years. As I said, we are focusing on the more of the urgent care side of the pathway, and we do have significant funding, as you can see there, across Derbyshire of over £5.5 million, which as I've explained, a significant proportion will be looking at increasing our crisis-enhanced home treatment offer, but we also have a significant amount of money to really look at young adults. So those children, as they go beyond 18 and up to 25, those young adults who maybe haven't had the same helping hand into adulthood as all children. So some of those that are more at risk, maybe those that are leaving care or might have been known to youth offending services, and really making sure that we offer as good a transition for them as possible. We also have, as you can see, a key priority there around eating disorders and continuing to support our children in the community pathway. If we move on then, please. Thank you. So I won't go through the whole plan, as you've all had a copy of that, but as you can see, there are 12 chapters to the plan, which go through in detail how, as a system, we are working together and how we will be moving forward to address the needs of our children under those different categories. I'd like to move on to the next slide, please. So we're then looking at crisis, as we've mentioned, is one of our key areas. So the plan sets out a chapter explaining what our priorities are, what our current position is and our actions going forward. And we've done summary tables for each chapter, which hopefully people will find useful as a summary of a reference point for what we're trying to do. So as we've mentioned, the emergency crisis support is one of our biggest priorities going forward. And as I've mentioned about increasing the crisis intensive home treatment team, we're also going to be looking at building some day resource trialling 2-day resource opportunities, one north and one south, alongside a more flexible specialist community worker resource to be able to work with our young people who are at risk and in crisis, and that specialist workforce will be able to work with that child, whether it's in a day resource in the home, in the paediatric units, or in the community, so that we're really looking to wrap that crisis support around our children. I won't go through all of it in complete detail because I know you've all had sight of this previously. If I just, how am I doing for time, Lindsay? Sorry, am I okay? Do you want me to keep going through? Yeah, thank you. So the access to CAMS, so looking at demand. So you can see, if we move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we can see here so this data now is just looking at Derbyshire healthcare. So this is Derby City and the South, whereas previously I've been talking about all Derbyshire. So for the South, we are looking at, and it's the same pattern in the North. The numbers of non-face-to-face appointments, as you can see, have increased drastically during the COVID period and continues to be high. And that's obviously because of the transition and the move across to a digital online appointment system. But what we know is that not all children like that offer, and they do want to see people face-to-face. So where you see the dip of face-to-face appointments, that's as as you see the dip in the non-face-to-face appointments, that's where the face-to-face appointments have increased during the earlier part of this year. But the point to note is that when we compare June, July time to 12 months ago and beyond, our services, our CAM service is seeing 128% increase on 12 months ago. So we are seeing having a significant increase in the number of contacts with our children and young people. To move on, thank you. Referrals as well, what we're seeing is that referrals, although we know we had that dip during the beginning of wave 1 of COVID, as we've moved on, those referrals have continued to increase. And what we're seeing is that although accepted referrals in April and May 2021 were lower than 2019, by June and July 21, we've seen an increase again in those accepted referrals compared to the pre-COVID period of 2019. So referrals coming into CAMS are up. We'll move on, and I'll whiz through the whole pathway here quickly, showing demand. So one of the key areas that we are seeing, worryingly seeing an increase in demand is around the eating disorder pathway, and we've talked about this previously, I know, where we're seeing more urgent and more acute presentations of our children and young people with eating disorders. And so even though in the transformation plan reports on 2021, and we were meeting the national targets then for 95% of our eating disorder referrals for urgent seen within a week and for routine seen within 4 weeks. We are actually seeing now in the first quarter of this year that we're not quite meeting those targets, and that, you know, that's obviously a concern for us going forward. And some of that is concerned with, as I say, the number of and the acuity of children that are presenting with eating disorders. So the team and the specialist resources focusing on those children at that higher end of the pathway. To move on, thank you. So our targeted early intervention services, we built our minds. They're seeing a waiting time, as you can see there in the city, is currently running at 11 weeks, which is just below the 12-week threshold. Interestingly, what we have seen is we were starting to see a steady increase at the beginning of this year, but we saw in July, as you can see, a very significant increase in referrals to our targeted early intervention service. And what we found is that a number of those children have asked, and their families have asked, to not have a digital offer. They want to wait till schools reopen to have the face-to-face offer and the group offer. So they will be getting themselves back into place now. Schools are back in September. Move on, please. Our Changing Lives teams, across the 6 teams, I'm assured that it's a very similar picture across all 6. So the 2 teams in Derby City will be seeing similar weights with a median waiting time of only a week, which is something that we're really pleased with. So in those school networks where we have a higher number of children who are at risk of mental health issues, they are able to access that support quickly, which is what we're wanting. That's the remit of those teams, to be able to do that. So that's encouraging. And then if we just move on to slide 13, this shows the capacity that we have in Cooth. So Cooth is the digital offer, and the best way for us to monitor activity is to look at the contracted worker hours that we pay for where children can access support either via chat messaging or via other internet means. And what we've found is in Q1 they were actually delivering over the contracted hours, so they were running at 119%. So we're seeing that demand continuing to increase across the whole of the pathway for our children with mental health needs. And then finally, the last slide that we've got here is looking across the whole of that pathway. So the data is aggregated for the mental health data set. And what we can see is across our PCNs in the city, what the median waiting time is. So that's taking into account those targeted early intervention services as well as the CAMS services, both the core services and the urgent services. So it is a real mixture, but it just gives you an idea. If we compare a year ago, July 19, as a rolling 12 months a year ago, and our current July 20 to 21, you can see across the board the median waiting time has actually reduced, which is something that we're obviously pleased about. And that also the median waiting time to the second contact. So the first contact is when people are assessed, and then the second contact is when they start their treatment as a broad indicator. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop through the plan, and obviously there's a lot more within the plan that anybody may have questions on. So I'm quite happy now to take any questions from the floor, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. First of all, I'd just like to thank you and all your colleagues for your time, dedication, and the fantastic way that you've really looked at what the issues are in CAMS to try and make things better for our children and young people in Derby City. So thank you to yourself and all your colleagues for that. Is there a view on what would be needed to assist in the recruitment of these specially trained staff? Because that seems to be what the hurdles are, doesn't it?
There are plans across Health Education England, which are starting to roll out, and as I mentioned, there are recruit to train opportunities, because I think that some of the specialism skills, that's something that people can learn on the job. So we are looking at some of those things. I think, we are working across the system. We are working with Joined Up Care Derbyshire on that wider strategic plan, and it's something that we're not doing in isolation. We are working with our local authority colleagues and also with the voluntary sector, because I think as I've mentioned, I think there's a lot of people across the community who have a real empathy and have skills that could be utilised. So we're trying to look as flexibly as possible at that workworkforce.
Okay, thank you. Is there any scope for working with the universities on this at all?
Definitely, yes. So we're working so that with Derby University, I know the Mental Health Trust and Chesterfield Royal are working with the universities on, as I mentioned, these recruit to train opportunities. There is work there. Have you got anything?
Thank you. Any questions from the floor? Councillor Hazelgrave.
Thanks very much for that really quick American tour through it, and I understand why you did that, because it's such a lengthy report to go through page by page, but I'm afraid I was relying on the report as presented, and I was just some concerns I have about, for example, the waiting time for a first occurrence of a psychotic episode in 14. I would imagine it does occur younger, but it usually comes on more often around adolescence, although it's still quite rare, I hope. You're leaving 2 weeks before you actually see someone, or are you more agile depending on the severity of the episode?
All of the services will triage the referrals to see if somebody is in crisis and requires a service immediately, they will be getting that response as quickly as possible. The services will be triaged, and there are standard waiting times. The 2 weeks is something that people might be getting support from other areas and other places maybe through primary care or other networks. Yeah.
I mean, given that person has no insight into the fact that they have, they're in a psychotic episode, you just don't know what their behaviour might lead to and how unpredictable it would be, and how much their safety, personal safety, would be at risk. Now, on page 14, there's a lot of indicators about things. It's this page here, but we don't have a figure for a percentage of looked after children whose emotional well-being is a cause for concern in 2019 to 20 for Derby. There's just a star there, or an asterisk.
The data that you're referring to is from Fingertips, so this is nationally published data. So I think that the link, it is in the latest draft of the plan. I can't remember if it's in the plan that you've seen. So that's published by the Public Health. By the Observatory. It is, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm not sure why that's not there. But that's not data that we've been able to put together.
It might have been conflated into Derbyshire, maybe. I don't know, because it's all part of the same CCG, or certainly part of it is.
Yeah, I'd have to relook at the actual indicator you're referring to. Sorry.
Chair, if you don't mind, this art of brilliance, could you talk a little bit more about that? Because I do think it's really interesting in terms of how that might impact schools and changing the ethos in schools on mental health.
Apologies, I missed which element you said.
Art of brilliance, the art of brilliance.
Ah, okay. So the art of brilliance is that's been made available to the workforce as a I've forgotten the chap's name that delivers it, but it's about empowering people to feel more confident, to improve people's well-being and their approach to dealing with situations and to dealing with things. I think it has been offered to the workforce rather than schools, I think. Yeah, I'm not.
Do you think there might be some mileage in making it letting schools know and seeing if they want to sign up to the package? Because I do think it would help to maybe in some schools or in many schools improve the ethos in terms of how mental health is seen and treated and spoken about.
Do you know about?
I think that possibly would be a matter for the school, but the Art of Brilliance is a fairly local package, and it's all about having more confidence in how you deliver things. I can't remember the chap's name either, but he wrote Spy Dog if you want to look him up. But.
Andy Cope, it is, yes.
And it is offered to schools. Yeah.
Oh, it is offered to schools. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Sorry, the only other question would be, what barriers do you see to achieving the plan? I mean, clearly there's an issue of, you'd love more people to get employed and be put on the books, but there's only a finite number of people in the country that have the skills that you want, and everybody else wants them as well.
Yeah, the workforce challenge is significant. I mean, and in answer to the, can we get the universities more engaged? Derby University is fairly confident we've got a good turnout despite the bursary situation for nursing staff coming through, which is good news. There's a dispersed model of allied health professionals, so OTs, SLTs, physios, in other universities. Attracting those into Derbyshire will be a challenge, as will the development programme. So we've got a development programme for non-registered staff to start to undertake their own training within trusts, and we've got an expanded apprenticeship scheme as well, which is being rolled out. But you're absolutely right, Councillor, the biggest challenge is on workforce. The good side is we're all working together, so the idea is we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul with the workforce, so we're looking for a single workforce plan. So Derbyshire can move together without being in competition with itself. I think that's a really key and important message, that we are trying to do that. And it's good that charities such as Rethink and P3 are talking together in collaboration, which is a massive step forward in culture change. And I think we're doing really well with that.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Rye.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to echo comments really sort of praising the report. It's incredibly detailed and incredibly complex. I can't imagine how many hours went into it, so thank you so much for all the work that's gone into that. So looking mainly at page 26 on the eating disorder services, it mentions the Derbyshire urgent cases and the Derbyshire routine cases. It's not sort of a kind of on-the-spot immediate point, but is it possible to get the Derby breakdown for those rather than just the Derbyshire figures? And also, just wondering, it says 1 week for urgent cases, 4 weeks for routine. Can I just sort of clarify what would class as an urgent case? Would it be sort of on, hospitalisation, on the verge of hospitalisation? Just get a clarification on that, please.
Okay, thank you. So, getting the Derby figures, we should be able to do that because we can. I think we can get it to PCN. I think we can draw that down. So if you want access to that, we can look for that. The urgent is I think it's to do with BMI, and I think it's to do with risk as to how quickly somebody is physically deteriorating and needing physical intervention, because obviously that's incredibly risky, particularly for a child or young person if they're losing weight rapidly. Were there your two questions? Was there another one?
Yep, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you'd like me to add anything onto that. So for urgent cases who get hospitalised, they often spend a little bit of time on puffing ward, which is at UHDB, and we have specially trained nurses there to help with the situation. Frequently, as you may know, that eating disorders specialist hospital placements aren't commissioned by CCGs but by NHS England, and COVID and various other things have taken around 80 beds out of the system at last count. This is because people have to isolate all the staff of those hospitals are off sick. So it's caused an incredible amount of pressure that we've had to manage locally. But you're right, it's BMI that is still used as a key trigger, rightly or wrongly, but that's the current measure, and the degree of complex behaviour that goes along with it.
Any further questions? No. Moving on to the recommendations now then. So recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. To consider the presentation, to make any further comment or recommendations following the discussions on the presentation received. Any further comments or recommendations? We all happy with that?
Just when would we get an update? Will it be annual or every 6 months or what? Because obviously it's a big area that we need to know is being tackled and kept under control, so to speak.
Yes. I mean, would February, March next year come and see how things are progressing, where things have moved from here, and get councillors to have a chance to ask more questions? Is that okay? Yeah, we all happy with that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So moving on now then. Hi, so moving on now to item 6, special needs provision. This was requested by myself as chair following publication of an article in derbynews.org entitled "Council Illegally Promotes Unapproved School for Special Needs Children." I did discuss this would be on the agenda, and we have requested that the Cabinet member and the Director of Service attend for an explanation, and so councillors can ask questions. So I'll now pass over to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So clearly I can't talk about the individual case or reference any children, because that would be inappropriate. But let me just give you a bit of background to the article that Councillor Lind refers to. So in terms of background, this involved 2 tribunal cases that the council was involved in, where Jasmine Hall was proposed as a possible school, although Jasmine Hall was never actually named in the final Education, Health and Care plan. So for context, and this is the important bit, at the time of the tribunal process, Jasmine Hall was not an open school. We'd worked successfully with Jasmine House, which is an established school for children with SEND and where outcomes are good. And the provider of this school was hoping to open a further school, which they planned to call Jasmine Hall. So you had Jasmine House open. Jasmine Hall was the proposed school that this provider was working through and trying to open in the city. So as part of the Education, Health and Care Plan process for the children involved, a number of different schools would have been approached, which is the usual process anyway, and asked to consider if they could meet the young person's needs. At that particular point, none of the schools that were approached felt able to meet the young people's needs. So Jasmine Hall was stated as the local authority preference during conversations with the parents as we progressed with the Education, Health and Care Plan document and process. However, this was not the eventual outcome following further discussion and negotiation with the parent as part of the tribunal process, and a different school was named. So just a few issues just around context which might be helpful to scrutiny. It's not against the law to name unopened schools and education, health and care plans. There is case law to this effect. So there's nothing unlawful about the actions of the council in this context, despite what might have been in the article that Council Lynn refers to. But it is unhelpful to name schools that have not yet opened in final EHCPs, even if the provider has a track record of providing good provision for children with SEND, which was relevant here in this particular case. And we've already ensured that this practice in the team has been changed to reflect this. Scrutiny will be aware that we have a SEND strategy and vision, which has been co-produced with partners and our parent carer together forum, which is about having an inclusive approach to how we meet the needs of children with SEND, about ensuring that we invest in our graduated response, that early intervention approach within Derby, so that we can support children and young people earlier in their lives, providing more enhanced resource places in mainstream schools in our city, and ensuring overall that we've got the right children in the right school at their particular point in their educational careers. I know you've had previous conversations here that Pauline Anderson has brought to the meeting, looking at the SEND strategy and vision and regular updates. And for information, there's a paper going to Cabinet on Wednesday this week, which is setting out a consultation on a set of proposals that have been informed by the views of partners, parents, carers, following a call for views that we undertook at the beginning of this calendar year. And that's quite a significant step in our journey around sufficiency and provision for children with SEND in the city. And we've already agreed with Council Lynn that will come to this Scrutiny Commission in October as part of the overall consultation process. So that's the context and position, Chair.
Thank you.
I've got nothing further to add. That those are the factual areas of this. Happy to obviously answer any questions.
Thank you. I mean, it's very, very good to hear that there has been change. I think that we need to ensure as a council that is embedded in policy, that we are not promoting or putting forward or nominating schools that are basically a proposal on the back of a cigarette packet, because they don't exist, they don't have planning permission, they've not got the appropriate licences from Ofsted and the DFA. I think as a council we need to ensure that that happens, and I would like to question how the council can nominate a school that doesn't exist prior to the very same council's planning application process. That is a judicial process, and for a council to be saying to a tribunal, for instance, that we name this school in section I of a plan for this tribunal, is that not preempting the outcome of a planning decision effectively? So I would ask as Cabinet member, do you find that acceptable that the council is doing that, and should we not put processes in place to ensure this really doesn't happen again?
So as Andy has said, it isn't against the law. However, we don't find that acceptable, and we have changed our processes so that that won't happen again. I can assure CYP Scrutiny here that I have absolutely nothing to do with planning. I haven't been on planning for 19 and a half years, just adding it up. Yep, I have absolutely no plans to return to planning, can't stand it, don't like it, don't have anything involvement with it. But in terms of this as an act, we won't be doing it again, and those processes have been changed. But to just reiterate, it is not illegal. So the council have not acted illegally in this. We're not happy about it, and therefore we have changed it. And we've made sure that all our staff are trained and all our staff understand that. So the article was incorrect in terms of saying it was an illegal action. It wasn't illegal. And as I can say, all I can do is give you those assurances that we have changed our processes, we've trained our staff, and I can give you those assurances that it won't happen again.
Thank you. Has the council launched legal action against derbynews.org to dispute that then?
No, I don't plan to waste the council's funding to do that. We have more serious things that we need to spend our money on.
Okay. Yeah. Would the Cabinet member not agree that it is imperative that we are ensuring there isn't long gaps in children's education, that we are ensuring as a council that we are ensuring they are at school, back in a school environment as soon as practically possible, rather than saying, well, we might have a school available at the end of the year if it works out?
As we said earlier, I'm not going to go into the particulars of this case. That's not for issue to be spoken about here. On a general note, we would always try and make sure that children get to the right school at the right time with the right needs being met for them as soon as is physically and effectively possible. We would never keep children away from school on purpose. That is not what we try to do. We try to make sure that they get the best education that they can get with the needs met for their personal needs to be met. So, you know, like I said, we won't talk about this individual case, but I can give you those assurances that the teams absolutely try and do that all the time.
Yeah, I think the reason we're raising it is because it wasn't an individual case, there were several cases. I'd like to open up to the floor now. Are there any questions from the floor? Councillor Hazelgrave.
Chair, I mean, it may not be illegal to name a school that doesn't exist, but if, say, someone gets an EHCP and it's in February, and that school is not going to open till at least September, and the named school is not in existence, what happens? Is the just for clarification, is that child in limbo until that school opens, or is alternative provision given, even though it's not specified in the EHCP?
I mean, that is one of the challenges practically in this particular context. So whilst naming a school that hasn't opened, and of course, schools could be in, the school that is planning to open could be in a different phase of its development. They could be almost at the point of registration by Ofsted. They might only be at the planning stage. So we could be talking, you know, weeks, not months. We could be talking an academic year, depending on where things are. And of course, there'll be different stages of the process to go through, from the application to open a school, to have, you know, the building designation change, which would need to come to planning and the council. They need to apply to the DFE. They need to apply to Ofsted. There's lots of different processes to go through. In fairness, this was some way off when you look at the kind of context here, which is part of the concern that we've got really in terms of just understanding the impact on the child and the family. But there could well be cases where it's, you know, not very far off, and we're very confident that it's going to go through. So yes, there is always a risk if a school that we think is going to open is some way off from being, you know, confirmed and registered and opened, and that school being named in any HCP, there would be a period where there might well be an extended period of time out of school, which none of us want. I mean, as Yvonne says, you know, our priority is to try and ensure that we've got children matched to the right school with the right needs. I guess, you know, the context around these two tribunal cases was that there had been a range of different schools who had been approached based on the assessed needs of the young people. And we've got a range of schools as part of our framework that we will go out and speak to based on the particular needs, whether it's, ASD or autism or, you know, social emotional. There'll be a range of schools that we would approach, and all the schools have to consider the advice and the assessment. That all takes time, but it's built into a process. It should be done within a certain amount of time in terms of weeks, but all came back and said they couldn't meet needs. So there's a context here within a system that is under significant pressure, and you will know that from previous presentations that have come here. You'll know that just from looking in the press nationally around the pressure that the SEND system is under. So there is a context here which doesn't kind of mitigate the kind of arguments from the chair, and absolutely issues that Councillor Williams and I talk about a lot, and, you know, we feel very passionate about. But the short answer is yes to your question, but that's partly why we need to, you know, make sure that practice is as robust as it can be, even though what happened here wasn't unlawful.
Any further questions? No. Okay, moving on then to the recommendations, 2.1 and 2.2, to consider and discuss the verbal update, to make any further comments or recommendations following discussions on the update received. I thank you both for coming today, and I would like to put forward two recommendations. Firstly being, I would like to propose that Derby City Council has policy in place to ensure that any school placement proposed or offered to children and young people actually exists and have the appropriate planning permissions, authorisations and registrations, particularly by the Council, the DFE and Ofsted. The second recommendation I'd like to put forward, I would also like to make further recommendation that this matter is also referred to the Audit and Governance Committee for further considerations. So, can we have a vote on that, please? All in favour? Right, okay. The recommendations put forward to Cabinet are passed. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask a question? The first recommendation, I've not got a problem with, but what is your intention with the second recommendation? I really don't understand that one we've just explained.
I think it's up to them to discuss and deliberate. Thank you. So
I'm sorry,
on now.
You're not prepared to answer that
Moving on now. It
question?
has passed, so we're moving on.
Thank you very much for listening to me. I appreciate your kind support.
Thank you very much. So we're moving on now to item 7. So item 7 was review of holiday activity and food programme over the summer. Now, unfortunately, due to the fact that no presentation has been forthcoming for tonight's meeting as requested, I am deferring this item to another meeting. So, item 8, now on the agenda, the work programme and topic review. Are we all happy with where it currently is? Yep, any objections? No objections? So that is also passed. Thank you. Thank you everybody for coming tonight. I appreciate your time. Thank you.